My name's Jolynn. I have notes. I have to write things down because I tend to lose my mind a little bit when I'm talking to people that I haven't talked to before about my work. Like she said, I come here from Indianapolis, but I'm originally from central Iowa, which is corn, not potatoes, by the way, and it's not the same as Idaho or Ohio. Those are 3 different states. But I now live and work in Indianapolis, which is kind of similar to Iowa, but it's considered to be part of the Midwest. But fun fact, we're actually on Eastern time in Indianapolis because it's actually not really in the middle of the country at all. People in Indiana call themselves Hoosiers, and I'm not ready to assume that title for myself. I don't know what a Hoosier is exactly. I feel like I need a little more information before I, claim that title. But I did recently go to, for the first time, the Indianapolis 500, which is a famous IndyCar race. It's like the thing that Indianapolis is known for. So I feel like it puts me like a little bit closer to being a Hoosier, whatever that is. So I might have to claim it one day. But all the things that I'll be talking about today share a common thread in my belief and the power and importance of creativity, imagination, and human connection. You'll hear the word human a lot. And my interest in humans stems from a life spent in close proximity to many of them. Growing up, my family always had someone extra living with us, whether it was a neighbor kid who would just come over and stay for days on end, or exchange students from 6 different countries that we hosted when I was a kid, and actually just finished hosting a student that we just sent back last week. And then eventually foster children beginning when I was in about 8th grade. Sometimes just friends whose parents sent them out. Like, our house was just a place that you could go and be accepted. And that just kind of taught me to be very open and interested in people and curious about who they are. And my work has everything to do with people, with human beings, and how we interact with each other. And I just want to mention it because during my time there, I made lots of meaningful friendships. I really enjoyed the people. I learned a lot, and it's where I got started doing electrolytic etching, which is a process that uses electricity to etch copper plates, and it's something that I do in my studio a lot. If we want to go down that rabbit hole, we can later, but I won't get too heavily into that process because it's just one of many processes that I work in. I have a really kind of active creative life. When people ask me like what medium do I like to work in, it's a little bit hard for me to answer because I really span a lot of media. So I work across mixed 2D, performance, installation, textiles, and toys. I work a lot in printmaking. I like the community of it. I like the physical movement of it. I like to be kind of up on my feet, moving around the room when I'm working. And I like printmaking. I enjoy these aspects of printmaking in the same way that I enjoy dancing. This is me and my husband. Quite a few years ago, we met dancing Lindy Hop in Charleston in Des Moines, Iowa. What feels like a long time ago now, but dance and music, like visual art, have always had a big presence in my life. And there's like a rhythmic quality to the work that I make, and that rhythm is kind of part of viewing it too. This one, if you look at it closely, it has, this is a really large drawing, like 3 feet by 5 feet, and it has all this little beard stubble. And when I'm drawing something like that, I like to do it like to a tempo. There's kind of a rhythm to making it, and I think a rhythm to viewing it too. And there's always kind of music as part of what's going on in my brain. I really like the ability to layer that's possible with printmaking. I like to take a lot of risks with my work and just not treat anything as precious. So when I can make multiples, I was telling somebody recently, I can mess it up in a lot of ways before I find something that I'm happy with, but I like to try new things, change up what I'm doing. And my work is ultimately, it's fueled by a lot of things, but ultimately imagination, absurdity, and humor. And there's a lot of that to be found. This is my favorite part of it. A lot of that to be found in the way that we regard our bodies as humans. And as a human, I worry about my body. I worry about my kids' bodies and other people's bodies. I feel other people's expectations of my body. Like, that's, you know, it's kind of a weird thing. We all are made of the same, like, squishy, slimy stuff, yet you don't want anyone else to find out that, like, I'm gross too. Like we're, you know, we're all made of the same stuff, and those universal human experiences are not, you know, they're not usually found in casual conversation. Those are both fascinating and very funny to me. And I use humor a lot in my work. Sometimes I like to tell people, like in a deadpan way, that I'm very funny. I'm very funny. But this comes, you'll probably see some things in here that you recognize, but using humor so much in my work, and the fact that I'm so very funny comes from, that's what I tell my students too. I'm like, you guys, I'm really funny. It comes from the things that I grew up taking in. Mel Brooks movies, old cartoons. Yeah, Young Frankenstein right here. I watched a ton of Mel Brooks, Three Stooges, like, and even in some of the music I listen to. And actually, there's this cartoon, I think it's like from the 80s, the cat came back, and I just recently remembered it, and I found it on YouTube, and I watched it, and I remembered that I watched this thing over and over and over when I was a kid, and I just thought, this explains everything. So if you have a chance, to find it on YouTube, it was groundbreaking for me. I'm like, I think I know what's happening in my head. But these things were staples in my house growing up, and comedy, slapstick and otherwise, has just always been a big presence in my life. And like I said, even a lot of the music that I enjoy has some dark or absurdist humor to it. I view life through a humorous lens. These are a couple of mixed media prints that are not here today, but just part of my work. But humor is kind of how I process experiences. I also view life through a female lens, which means different things to different people. But in my work, I refer to bodily fluids, use sexual innuendo, and appeal to the senses in a way that I think can feel like a little yucky. The way that it feels yucky when you have, you know, an unwanted appraisal of your body from a stranger, and you know, like that kind of yucky. You don't know what to do with it. And the references can be mischievous or adolescent, I think, but our insecurities about our outward selves, I think, run really deep, and I just find those things interesting. So some people really see humor as a facade, and I don't see it that way. I see it as an entry point for connection. I see it as like it creates an ease of trust between people. If we have a laugh together, then we know, like, you're not a robot, I'm not a robot, you know, neither one of us is a robot. Right away, I trust you more if I know you're not a robot. But I think that humor's a release, and I think that it's every bit as earnest and powerful as any other emotion that we draw from creatively. So the humor in my work is kind of self-deprecating at times, but it's an invitation to connect with it, I think, because there's a vulnerability in it, and we will get into that. So this is a quote by Kurt Vonnegut. If any of you have talked to me for any length of time, you know that I really like Kurt Vonnegut, and he's also from my current home city of Indianapolis. And he says, laughter and tears are both responses to frustration and exhaustion. I myself prefer to laugh since there's less cleaning up to do afterward. And that really resonates with me. I think that's from his book, Man Without a Country. And while we're talking about Kurt Vonnegut, little sidebar, we're not talking about Kurt Vonnegut for the last time. I have curated a lot of literary portfolios with the Kurt Vonnegut Museum in Indianapolis. I really enjoy kind of bringing people and artists together in this way, surrounding common themes, especially literary ones. I really like the way that people interpret Vonnegut, and when I pick the people out to do it, they're always kind of, it's a little bit like, oh, how did you know that? It's like a secret club or something. But I just have a way of knowing that people might be a good fit for it. But I think when you find an artist or a writer or something that really resonates with you, it's because they're saying these things that you've always kind of felt, but you didn't really know how to say for yourself. And that's how I feel about Vonnegut and his use of humor, and that's why he's kind of been with me for so long. And the kind of humor, these are images of the Vonnegut Museum. I skipped that slide, but that's okay. The humor that I use in my work is absurd and abstract, like something that's like on the tip of my tongue, but that I'm never going to be able to express fully verbally. It's kind of these emotional, sensorial peculiarities that I hope will come across in my work. And something that I always really hope for is not that people will look at my work and like they'll get it, but they'll somehow feel like, see something and say, I've felt that before, but I don't know how to say it, or like you relate with it in a way that you can't really describe. And that's the stuff that's most interesting to me. So it's those kind of inexplicable feelings, bizarre sensory overload that I feel and see in certain moments that I hope will come through in the images. I just often find myself hyper aware of things that seem normal becoming really absurd, things that are absurdities happening around me that maybe only I'm feeling, and I'm wondering if anyone else is feeling these things, those things that defy verbalization. I'm always drawn to beings, objects, and places more for their idiosyncrasies than for anything else. When I was a kid, I had this, we had a lot of rescue animals, and we had this old black cat named Jake, and when we got him, he was already kind of old and sick, but I became very attached to him in a short time. So when he died, my mom let me like pick out a kitten from a litter in a newspaper ad, and I picked the cat, this white and gray cat that was very, very dirty. I thought that one seemed like it must be the most fun because of how dirty it was. And I remember my mom was like, "What do you want this dirty cat for?" And he smelled terrible. I was like, "No, that's the cat I want." But I've always been that way. Like I thought this one is surely the most fun because, you know, he's been up to something. So for me, there's just kind of mystery and excitement that, like, when I witness or feel something that's this strange or odd. Humor, satire, and absurdity have had a huge presence within the history of printmaking, which is why I think since the first time I was introduced to it, printmaking has kind of felt like a home to me. I feel very at home with that community and in that medium. And speaking of home, these are some images of my actual home. There's a little dot right there, the childhood home where I grew up in Iowa. Remember, corn, not potatoes, and not Idaho or Ohio. We got it. So I'm from a really small town. Actually, I'm from outside of a very small town, and I spent a lot of time with my dad, and when I wasn't out on some kind of odd job or another with my dad, I really like to roam outdoors. I love being in the woods. But when, you know, the woods to me, when I was a kid in Iowa, they were big, they were vast. And my sister and I and our best friend who lived next door, kind of like a little bit through the woods, we were always out exploring. We were like, everything was an adventure. We were setting booby traps for bad guys and, you know, just imaginary bad guys. There weren't really any bad guys coming. But there are a lot of things about home that just kind of continue to make me want to make work. These are, I guess if I had to guess or explain, I would say that my imagination and childhood adventures in the woods were what led to this exhibition that I did all the way back in 2012. It was the end of my undergrad studies, and it had prints, drawings, found objects, assemblages, video, and performance. And I built this rock costume with a little face hole in it, and I was like running around town, and my friend and studio mate documented it. But I invented a world in which my subconscious was a literal place that I could visit, and this exhibition was kind of a documentation of that world. But I just share that with you because it's one of the things that telling these kinds of stories are what make humans really fascinating to me. We're multifaceted creatures, and as artists, I think we make our most interesting and exciting work when we're drawing from all aspects of our lives and personalities. And with that, since we're talking about all aspects, here's another another side note that will tie in, I promise you. There are a lot of things that can happen, I think, when we pull from all areas of our lives and experiences. I grew up being outdoors, kind of considered myself a friend to the natural world and its many creatures, but also had my mom, like checking my hair for ticks every time I would come in from outside. You don't want ticks. I had sawtooth grain beetles in the cabinets of my first apartment. Let's see. I had silverfish in my current studio when I first moved into it, and those things eat paper, glue, and textiles, if you're not familiar, so don't have them. They're not your friend if you're a works on paper person. But my complicated relationship with the Earth's smallest creatures inspired me to organize another portfolio, which invited artists to explore the intricate and at times volatile relationship between humans and insects. And I was realizing that I have a lot of insects and things in my work, and I started, my daughter started bringing me these cicada wings, and I just started collecting them. But not, it's in Indiana, the Midwest, some eastern and southern states, we have these 17-year cicada emergences. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like these cicadas live underground for almost 17 years, and they come above ground. The last big one was in 2021. They come above ground, and they only live for like 4 to 6 weeks. And during that time, it's like the most crazy music fest. Like, I can only compare it to like, some kind of crazy music festival. They scream and they mate and then they die. Like that's their whole life cycle above, like they've waited 17 years for this, and like that's all that happens. But the Midwest is just a really fascinating place, I think, if you're willing to look closely at things. I don't think it has a reputation for being fascinating, but as a person who's been there and like looking at all the things on the ground, it's just more of what I draw inspiration from. There are a lot of visual artists, especially from the 20th century to now, whose work has really impacted me. Many of them are from Chicago. I feel like I've talked to people about Chicago a lot in the last few days. It's just a city that's close to my heart. And even though it's not my home, it's near my home. And I really kind of always go back to my home in the end, and seeing how it's really influenced my work in a lot of different ways. But I've also done a lot of traveling and spent significant time in Spain because of my husband's family roots. And let's see, did I get to that? Yeah, here we go. So these are images from a residency I did north of Barcelona back in 2018, but I've spent a lot of time there over the years. And that residency was, I think I made a collagraph there. I learned about making collagraphs there, which is another process that I use a lot in my work. And again, another rabbit hole we could go down if you want to talk about technical things. But that place was beautiful. I made friends with a dog and a turtle, and I had my birthday there, and it was a really great time. And it's also where I first saw Goya's 3rd of May, 1808. And if you're wondering what that has to do with my work, I am getting to that. So my work is, just wait, you don't know what's coming for you. I'm gonna fall apart. Okay. So, but that's okay. We're all humans. My work is humorous, it's absurd, it's outlandish, but my work and everything that I think that art should be, like, it goes beyond funny stuff. Like I said, it's not a facade, it's not just about funny stuff. But I saw this painting for the first time, and I had seen it as an art history student, Goya's 3rd of May, 1808. And I went to the Prado in Spain, and I was excited to see Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights, because it's, crazy stuff like I like. But I found myself most impacted by this painting, and I just, standing there in front of it, I felt like kind of, just impacted by the real humans that were there in this time, like these in 1808, which a time which isn't really that long ago in the grander scheme of humans and history. I'm standing here in this city where this massacre of Madrid's people took place at the hands of Napoleon's army, you know, just, I guess it would have been just a little over 200 years earlier. And humans, you know, we're not that old. Our history is not that old. So, and I felt, yeah, just really struck by that. And it was kind of the first time, I guess, feeling that way about a piece of art. I just was seeing it, you know, for its real nature and what it meant for those real people and their breathing, soul-bearing existence. And I felt, like I said, just more connected than I thought I could to, you know, this image, this piece of art. And then I actually ran into the guy from the 3rd of May in the Prado, in the lobby. Just kidding. There was this guy, right after I went and saw this painting, I kind of had, you know, I was having this moment of like really thinking about this painting. And then I see this guy that looks like the central figure from the 3rd of May. So I kind of like secretly took a picture of him because in my head, I was just like, wow, is he really here? I don't know. It's a strange moment. But there he was, 205 years later, having a coffee in the museum cafe. I'll have you take a closer look at this later. You can see he really looks like that guy in there. But in all seriousness, I just was so impacted by this painting, and it was the first time I'd ever really experienced something like that. And then I saw this guy, and I thought he really could be a relative of the people in that painting. So it just made it even more real for me. So having this experience and kind of revisiting it in my head over and over again just led me to ask myself, you know, like if Goya's 3rd of May makes me feel this way, and like I'm making all this goofy stuff, like what does my work do, and like what does it mean, and why the heck am I doing it? And those are questions that all artists ask themselves, you know, whether they've looked at Goya's 3rd of May or not. But grief, loss, tragedy are just parts of life that I think everyone will experience at some point and in some capacity. There are a lot of opportunities as a human on Earth to face and contemplate our mortality, like many opportunities. So to quote the very earnest lyrics of Hank Williams, "No matter how I struggle and strive, I'll never get out of this world alive." You know that song? Yeah, Hank Williams. But my work has its own kind of earnestness, I think, in the face of life's difficulties. So it's not that I went home from that and thought, you know, I gotta start making wartime imagery or something, because I just was at this point where I thought, in order to be taken seriously as an artist, like I need to have suffered in some very specific way, or be very political, or like something big like that. So instead of, you know, going down that road, it just kind of made me want to dive deeper into the unique flavor of strangeness, playfulness, and inventiveness that I see in the world, in the way that I see things. So this finally brings me to the work that's here today in the gallery. It brings me back to my home and connects the minutiae of life and its toll with the playful, if sometimes menacing, humor of children. Okay, so a lot of these poems were already kind of floating around in my head and some on paper for more than a year in, let's see, it would have been in early 2023 when I learned of the sudden and still unexplained to me, gosh, I'm gonna lose it. I still can't talk about this, the death of my childhood best friend, the one that hung out with me in the woods all the time. Just give me a second, I'll get it together. But this kid, we had, this is gonna take a while, just give me a second. We had lost touch when he, just wait, it's actually gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse. When he moved away in 5th grade, and then just look at your notes, Jolynn. But I'll get through it. So we kind of reconnected again a few years later with, or a few years earlier before he died, with just kind of like happy birthdays and stuff like that. We had a club together called the Fart Masters Club. So we had a lot of these like old inside jokes, and anyway, I still don't exactly know what happened. But you know, the loss that I feel is very different from the people that knew and loved him as a grown person, because what I, you know, for me, it was kind of like about, you know, someone from my childhood. So, but, so I wrote this poem. You can, I don't think this one is here, but it's about Dustin, my friend, and his floppy socks. He always had these socks on that were too big, but I wrote this kind of in his memory back in 2023 when I tried and failed to move my parents out of their childhood home. And I just could really still feel and hear him in every corner of that house and that property. And I spent a lot of time in that spring and summer writing, just writing down everything that I could remember. See, I'm going to finally get it together here for a second before I fall apart again. But writing down these memories, and I put together a book that I wanted to share with any family of his that I could find. But it just made me think about how much of my sense of humor kind of stems from these memories. I was thinking about how much time we just spent like rolling on the floor laughing. Like I remember one time, I mean, everybody's seen like my work has farts in it. One time we farted at the exact same time, and we could not stop laughing. My sister was there, and she remembers it, and we had this club, like, you know, we were kids, and we just thought that was really funny. And this poem was about his socks, because I just always remember him wearing these socks that were like falling off of his feet. And he would come and he'd just be with us for the whole summer practically. So this is a story that we wrote called Odd Todd, about this dog who was like on a journey through a fairyland because he got kicked out of his village for being a weirdo. But I came across this story when I was trying to help my parents clean out their house. But so this project kind of started out as like a bunch of scribblings that I just didn't really think I would ever show to anybody, but now it's part of a book that I'm calling Dust to Dust, which is in part in his memory. And then maybe this won't be so bad, we'll see, because this is where I'm like really gonna lose it, because so back in August, my dad died suddenly. He was a really rare human, funny, witty, and like extremely generous. Like he was the one behind like inviting all those people into my house, and like the reason why, you know, there just was always room for people. A lot of this work is in his memory as well. This is my dedication page from the book that I am working on. So it's poems and screen printed poems and mixed media prints. But up here it says, "For Dustin, who saved me from the heebie-jeebies, the Macarena, and the watchful eyes of Santa Claus." And then for Dad, to cogitate over, "You were all at once the world's largest leprechaun and a harmless little fuzzball. Thanks for making me nuttier than a squirrel turd." He always said I was nuttier than a squirrel turd. So a lot of this work is in his memory as well. So this body of work, which I said kind of started out as a bunch of scribblings, has just kind of come to have a lot more meaning to me. And in investigating and reconciling who I was as a child and the person that I now am, and what we have in common. Okay, it gets easier from here. That's like the hard part. It's a reflection of my longing for just laughter and levity, you know, even in the worst moments. And, you know, it's the only way that I can get through things sometimes. But this image and poem, it says, "Doody doody do, there's nothing in my head. Doody doody do, I'll live until I'm dead." And this lady has I think this one's here, she has a woodpecker on her head. But this came from a really difficult time that was back in 2022, and the years surrounding that had brought, it was the death of my husband's grandmother. There was a cancer diagnosis in there, severe debilitating illness for both of my parents, with long and rocky recoveries. My daughter was suffering from some, you know, mysterious symptoms during that time. So we had a lot of time spent in doctor's offices and hospitals. I saw someone who I love just be torn apart by the unique pain that comes with divorce. Even my dog had a surgery in there. He couldn't walk, like everything, you know, it was just everything all at once. And I was sitting in my living room and I was recovering from what was my third abdominal surgery in 5 years. And I felt bad. I just felt really bad. And I was kind of feeling the weight of everything from recent years. And just when you think that like you can't feel any lower, there's a woodpecker. It was just like, I was just feeling so bad, and it was just tapping incessantly outside my window. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, like, and I couldn't go anywhere because I was, you know, kind of incapacitated. So this series is, you know, it's in part response to the death of a dear friend, as well as my dad, and some really, really hard times. But it's also a way to kind of revisit the importance of play, that play, humor, and imagination have to me. So it's kind of like a series of jabs from my younger self, kind of asking like, hey lady, why aren't you fun anymore? What happened to all the fun? So I'm kind of poking fun at myself in some ways. This, you know, body of work is just kind of it's reflective of my desire to connect with the playfulness and sense of adventure that I see in my own kids. I had to put them in there because they're cute and fun and smart and everything, but they're really adventurous kids, and I just kind of have a longing to feel the way that they feel about life. It's a personal satire about dullness and sometimes the heaviness of everyday life as a grown person, in contrast to the kind of playful imaginativeness of my younger self. You know, sometimes being a grown-up is not as much fun as being a kid, as displayed in my earlier performance. And the title of this show, HEEBIE-JEEBIES, is an ode to the goofy oddities of life as a whole, as well as my love of early jazz music and dance, cartoons of a century past, and two of my fondest fellow weirdos, Dad and Dustin. So there's always going to be some amount of mystery attached to why I do what I do. That is what keeps me going. It's what keeps me interested, and I'll never be able to fully explain why I did this. But sometimes, oh, I love that I'm talking about blowing my nose already, because sometimes people really want to know, like, they ask me, where did the images come from? Or like, what is with all of these big noses and eyeballs? And what I want to know is, have you ever broken your nose? This is me around age 14, a few weeks after getting hit in the face with a softball. It really smashed my face. And that was the end of my softball career and the beginning of a lifelong journey of fixating on noses. So I only waited for 21 years of blocked airways to have my deviated septum surgically restored. So this was me in June of 2025 after surgery, wearing never mind. I was going to tell you what my husband said about that, but we don't need to. He makes me laugh. But the image on the left, I believe this one is here as well. This was an image I drew while I was recovering from that surgery, and I had a dream that my nose grew bigger than my whole head, and I couldn't see around it because like my nose was growing so big. I offered one to the surgeon to hang in his office, but he didn't want it for some reason. I don't know why. But I had this dream. So dreams are kind of interesting to me. You know, they're crazy. But I thought about doing a whole series about noses, and then I realized that I've been doing a series of noses for my entire life. So I should have just said that in grad school when they were like picking me apart. I should have just said like, my work is about having a nose. The end. Like, you know, that would have been unassailable in my thesis. Like, who can argue with that? I have a nose. So as at last, the part that hopefully you haven't been waiting too hard for, I draw my talk to a close. I want to share with you a quote from a book called Art and the Creative Consciousness. It's one that I refer to a lot. with my students. Oh yeah, I'm a teacher, by the way. There's that too. I don't cry for them the way that I did for you, though. So, but this says, thus the work of art, far from being an ornament, a fanciful addition to reality, lies at the heart of the mystery of being. And in my life and in my work and everything else that I do, I'm fascinated by the complexities of the human experience. And I am also determined not to ruin the experience by taking myself too seriously. So I will close at last with a quote from Kurt Vonnegut. I promised it wouldn't be for the last time. He says, I tell you, we are here on earth to fart around, and don't let anybody tell you any different. So thank you for going with me on that roller coaster.